the film that this was inspired by kind of the gripping accounts that were coming out of Vancouver for quite a period. So just take us through kind of the being mesmerized with that violence, and particularly in that community, and then how it manifested itself into this. And any of you can speak to that, but
Why don't you?
On the violence? I don't know how we got messed up in that stuff. I personally didn't.
It's true.
I had friends who were. I had some friends who died. I had some friends who went to jail. I still have friends who, married with kids and did 5-6 years in jail, stuff like that. I think somewhere along the line, we come over as you can see in the film, there's a big flavor of the immigrant life in Canada. His father, who Kulbhushan Kripanda, by the way, is an amazing actor. He seems to steal the film for me in that particular scene. He in that one, I guess, speech or whatever it is that he has, it kind of describes the struggles that our parents seem to have went through. And somewhere along the line, the first generation of people born here, I don't know what happened. We seem to have went down the wrong road. It wasn't as...
Well, some of you did.
Some of us did, yeah. It's always been there, though, and I don't know where it comes from, and I think the film speaks to it very heavily. You have to kind of search between the lines when you're watching the film, is that somewhere along the line, we're looking to be something special. Everybody wants to be somebody. There's many ways to do it. You can go to school, or you can become ridiculously wealthy. You can be a professional athlete, but to really stand out, it becomes very tough. We seem to have all these role models that we're looking up to, and I guess at the end of the day, all we really needed to do is to look up to a group of people who lost everything, gave up everything to come here, and to make life better for us, who's our parents. And I think somewhere along the line, we forgot about that.
Well, but picking up on that, Stephen, there's a touching scene in the film where Jeet's dad is talking about the struggle in the cranberry fields, and I mean the question of racism is, I think, touched on there and in other parts. And I think you were speaking to it, Steve, but maybe Deepa pick up that point of the Indo-Canadian community, the struggle.
Yes, there's no doubt about the struggle, as Steve so eloquently put it. But I must reinforce that this gang violence is not particular to only our community, the Indo-Canadian community. It is a part of the whole ethos. It started with the Irish when they first came to Canada, and then as every wave of immigration happened, it seems a pit stop of immigration is crime. So, as far as the pecking order is concerned, the gangs in the West Coast are the biker gangs, the Hells Angels, the mafia, the triads, the yakuza, and the pecking order for the Indo-Canadian gangs is slightly low down because, in fact, they don't fight with the organized gangs as much as they do with each other, and that's what fascinated me about it. That why, firstly, as Steve so put it, is that why do we choose this path? And it's obvious. It's a very quick way of recognizing and being recognized by the dominant culture. But also it's the tragedy, in a way, and that whole bonding that happens between men whose lives are almost like shooting stars, They shine and then it's over. And they're grieving mothers and families. And also, I think, the responsibility, for me, of the larger community. Yes, this happens in our community, but Canada is a country. We all have to be there for each other. And for me, that is very important, the responsibility of the larger community as it pertains to a particular community.
Very, very few of these young gang members live into their 30s, hardly any. We, during our research, met one who had gone to prison, and he was very thankful that he had gone to prison because all the people that he had been with were dead.
Yeah,
and he eventually became educated in prison and became a lawyer. They won't let him practice criminal law. But he got his law degree at Osgoode Hall in Toronto, and then he came back to British Columbia and is now an immigration lawyer. And
Wow.
he was very, very helpful to us in understanding how the culture of a gang actually works.
The question was, what is my ethos, I guess, in going in this direction, as my last films were more philosophical. I think that thematically this is exactly what my other films are about, which is about my concerns are about immigration, assimilation. How do we become visible in a society that wants to tends us to be invisible? So I don't think that I did a gangster genre film. For me, I was doing a dramatic film that was about gangsters. What happens when you take a step that is outside? And it's a gangster film, so it's going to have violence. I mean, I don't think it's sensational. This is what it's like. But it is intrigued. It does intrigue me. There's no question about it. That what happens? What are the repercussions of when you take a step that's, as opposed to Nep, who obviously took the step that led him to be a cop. Jeet, I think, who has incredible potential, as does Steve and all the other guys, ended up dead.
I think to build on that, I know I've got some colleagues here who work in film and theater and stuff like that. And one thing that we all know is when it comes to the ECU, extreme close-up, when you're like this, you really see that the eyes are a window to the soul, or whatever they say. And when the characters like us, who are kind of these supporting characters who are jokers and, mess around like normal guys do. But when you look at Jeet, the lead character, Randeep Huda, who is a magnificent, wonderful, wonderful actor, if you don't see those ECUs, and if you don't see any type of pain or any sensation of him being lost, then you didn't watch the film. That is, and speaking on guy who knows some guys who are kind of doing this, there's an element of that's in there. There's an element within these guys, and he nailed it in terms of, you walk around in nice suits and guns and nice cars and all that stuff. When he's alone, when he's with his daughter, his son, his girlfriend, all that stuff. When I watch it, all I see is pain inside him. So,
well, I'm sort of an instinctive director. I mean, I'm mostly my own casting agent as well. So I had heard about Steve through Balinder Johal, who I've worked with in Heaven on Earth. And when I was looking for Harry, she said, check out Steve. And I did. And I thought, my God, he's terrific. So I just called his agent up and said, I really want him to work on the film. We didn't have a formal audition.
we taped one, which was probably the worst audition I've ever done in my life.
And luckily, I didn't think so.
And I spelled her name wrong, and you wait. I was like, oh my God, I spelled her name wrong. She doesn't like me. But, yeah.
And Samir is the son of a very dear friend. I was looking for Peter all over, and I think I must have. I don't believe in formal auditions. I mean, with kids, the most important thing is that do they want to act or not. And so I was looking for kids who wanted to act, and I met about 4 or 5, but some wanted to, but the minute you started talking to them, they became shy. But when I told Peter what he had to say, he loved the idea of swearing so much. So so he says, I want to do it. So I said, yes, you can have it. Somebody asked me, are you glamorizing or are you doing in the East Indian? And I said, do we go into an Italian restaurant and say that, my God, it's filled with people from the mafia? No, we don't, So there is the stereotypical attitude, which is really scary for me. So the larger community should understand the complexity of it all. We are all Canadians. We've all had same experiences in our own community. So do not be judgmental, but say, what can we do to help? It's... it's been about like 2 years of just going through all the newspaper articles. I don't know if that's, and especially by an investigative reporter in Vancouver called Kim Bolan. So if anybody's interested, she's been reporting and doing incredible work on the reportage of gang members in Vancouver. So she was a real resource. And then there have been many books that have been written about fiction and non-fiction, but mostly non-fiction, about the Indo-Canadian gangsters in the Lower Mainland in BC. as well as a wonderful film documentary called Warrior Boys. If anybody gets a chance to see it, do. And CBC as well. So, you just take all these real events and real characters and you put them in a cauldron and you give it dramatic license, and out came from the cauldron Jeet. So it's drawn from events that happened, but finally it's a dramatic film. For me, yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, if we have a gang of women, I'd be the first one to make it on them. But the Katya character is, I think that Jeet is not a hero. I think he's a victim. So I guess it's all about perception. And if there's any hero in the film, I think it was the mother. So it depends on perception. Yeah. Well, I think I have to thank you for that, because the camera did move, and it was to show the urgency of the situation. The whole point of the film is that, and I think I mentioned it earlier, for me, the way everything comes from the characters. And the way I approached the characters were that they were like a meteor that just was, up in the sky for a second and then they were gone. But so to capture that imagery, it was all handheld and it had to move. And did it disturb me? I mean, reality doesn't disturb me ever. And that is a reality. The corpses, I don't think they're beautiful. I don't think any corpse is beautiful. But it's the reality, and I tried to not shirk away from that. I mean, just because I'm a woman, I didn't feel that I had to be, in any way veil it. This is reality, and it's not pleasant.
Deepa, Mehta, and the rest of you.
David Hamilton, the
David
producer,
Hamilton,
Steve
Dillon.
Thank you.